Hey guys, this is Miss Cat, and today we're going to be talking about how to create health for our character and how we store that information so we can actually see when they're losing health. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to want to make sure that we actually have something for our player, which is my little yellow guy over here, to hit to lose health. And so as you can see, I have these little red boxes. These eventually will become my hazards, but for right now they're just little red boxes. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to hit create empty, and I'm going to move this over top of it. I'm going to do add component. I'm going to look for a box collider 2D. Remember, we're working in 2D, so we need box collider 2D. From here, I can size it how I want. I'm not too worried about it. I'm just going to size it down and put it over top. I'm going to change the name by either right-clicking and hitting rename or coming over here to the inspector. I'm going to type hazard. Hazard. And then under tags, if you do not have this tag, you can create one, but I've already created a hazard tag. If you haven't done this, all you have to do is you have to hit add tag and then hit the plus sign right here, and it'll give you a new tag you can create. I'm just not going to do it because I don't need a new one, but if you do that and you go back into your hazard, you can actually see that it pulls that up, and you want to make sure that hazard tag is applied because we're going to be using that specifically. Tags allow us kind of to see if a game object has this tag. Like, I could have a ton of enemies, but as long as an enemy has the tag enemy on it, I can hit them the same way. I can attack them the same as how we're going to take health from our player, right? We're going to look for the hazard tag. You can add enemy tags, basically whatever, like I've said. So I already have a little hazard holder set up with all of my little hazards in here, so I'm just going to delete this one because I don't need it. But you guys, if you need to pause and start putting up your hazards or getting your enemies ready, that's more than welcome. But I already have mine set up, so I'm just going to go ahead and start. So I've got this hazard holder. My player already has his capsule collider. He already has his rigid body, and he's got his player controls right here. So I'm not too worried about that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here. I'm going to go scripts, and then I'm going to do create C# script. And I already have one called player health, but you know, you can always name it player health, player hits, whatever you want to name it. I'm not going to completely make a new one just because I already have one right here. Instead, I'm just going to hit delete on this one because I already have one, but I have player health right here. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. So as you can see, there's nothing in here. There's nothing for us to work with or anything else for us to really deal with. And so what we need to do before we start typing and all that is figure out, okay, how am I going to take damage? How is this player going to take damage? And I already have these hazard holders, or I already have these hazards in here. Sorry, I've got a hazard holder holding them all. But I already have these hazards in here. How are they exactly going to take damage? I have a box collider on them, but what's the difference? And so as you can see here, I've already turned on what is called is trigger. And so an is trigger allows me to actually go into an object. So instead of, you know, a collider where you just are going to smack against the wall, a trigger allows me to walk through it. And it's kind of like in a game whenever you might walk towards something and suddenly like a light turns on, that's a trigger. It's saying do something at this point in time. So we're going to be using all of our hazard box colliders as triggers. So go ahead and pull your script back up real quick, and we're going to start coding this bad boy. So the first thing we need to do is we need to actually say, okay, who is our player? So we're going to do public game object player. Let's see if I can type. There you go, player. And then I'm going to do public int death count. And I'm going to set this death count because it's an integer, right? So it's a number, a whole number. I'm going to go ahead and set this to 0. And so what that means is my death count is 0. I haven't died yet. If you just want to take health away from your player and then you want to have a separate death count, that's more than fine. I just have mine set up to where if he dies, I kind of want him to like respawn at the very beginning. And we'll kind of get into respawn in a little bit. But first, let's deal with this. So on void start, we don't need anything. Void update, we don't need anything. So really what we need to do here is we need to make a void on trigger enter 2D, which is right here. So it's void on trigger enter 2D. Mine automatically pops up. You can always pause this if you need to completely type it in. But what this says is upon entering a trigger, this object that I have will do something. And I actually don't even need my game object player at the moment. So I don't even need that, so I can just comment that out. Really, all I need at the beginning is my public int death count equals 0. So this is saying whatever the script is attached to upon entering a trigger is going to do the following. So we're going to go ahead and type some stuff in here. So I'm going to do if, make an if statement, collision dot game object dot tag equals because remember equals means it has to be this hazard. So I'm going to HA hazard. And so what this says right here is if collision game object tag equals hazard. So if I collide or I enter a game object with the tag hazard, I want it to do the following, and don't forget to end with your curly brackets. So if I enter that, I want my death count to equal death count plus 1. So all this says is that upon entering, I'm going to add 1 to my death count. So if I'm at 0 now, I enter a hazard, it's going to be, instead of 1, or instead of 0, it's going to be 1. Instead of 1, it'll be 2. And just to prove that it does this, I'm going to say print, and then I'm typing death count. All right. So I'm going to type in print death count. So as I go through here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to attach my player health. Oh, give it a second. Attach my player health to my player. Make sure I've got it all set up here. We're good. So let's go ahead and press play and watch how this works. So as I walk in here, oh, let me turn on my console so we can actually see when I hit it. So I walk in here and I touch the box. You can see it went up to 1. If I touch it again, it goes up to 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth, because I don't have an end to my death count, right? And so every time I enter this box, I enter that trigger, it's going to cause that to keep going up. And so that's literally all you have to do to actually capture that. It's that simple. It's not crazy. So that's really all there is for that. Now let's talk about creating our heads-up display, our HUD, and how can we kind of record our death count up there. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you guys first one thing. Actually, first, I want to do this is I want to make sure right now, because I'm not too worried about the other things, is if I move my player, I want my camera to follow. We'll go over a script later that makes it follow better and easier instead of like making your X and Y change every time with your player. But for now, we're just going to go ahead and attach your main camera to your player. So that way, as your player moves, your main camera moves with you. So now I'm going to create a UI. I'm going to create a canvas. And so remember what we talked about, UI is user interface. So our user interface is what we're going to see right here. And so over here, let's make sure that this render mode says screen space overlay. And then I'm going to choose pixel perfect. And so pixel perfect is going to make sure that I see exactly, like it borders exactly what this camera is. And if I double click on that, you can see this is my whole display. It might seem really confusing. It just gives you a lot of space to work in, so don't worry too much about it. but let's talk about what this is. So the canvas is where we put anything for our menus, anything like that, our heads-up displays, all that fits within this section right here of our canvas. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do right-click. I'm going to do Create UI, and I'm going to find, where is it? Image. There we go. I'm going to create a UI image. And right now it's just a white box. There's nothing really in there. And instead I'm going to go to Source Image, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull a random sprite I already have called Health 0. Ooh, that looks pretty bad. That's okay. This is my you know, my fill-in for now. It will eventually be replaced. Oh, sorry about that. I'm working on a desktop or on a laptop, so it's a little bit harder to navigate. But I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to move this over to where I want it to be. And if you can see in my game, I can kind of see where it gets set up in my display. So I'm not too worried about it. But I'm going to go ahead and put my health up here. And so what this is at 100, at 3 whole lives, I have this. And so we're going to go through next is how do I take away from that health? So go ahead and let's pull up our code again. Remember, all we have in here is death count, and it just prints it along the way so we can keep making sure that everything's good there. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here and I'm going to type in some new things. So I'm going to make some extra lines in here. I'm going to give myself a little bit of space. I'm going to type in HUD health display in a comment. So that way when I go through and I'm like, why do I have all these different integers or variables? What do they mean? I can just go, oh wait, that's for my HUD. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to make a public sprite. And then we're going to add these brackets right here. And so what this brackets is it says that, okay, we have an array or a number of sprites that we're going to fill up. And I'm going to call these health sprites. Now, after I do that, the next thing I want to do is I want to go to public image. Oh, image. And then I'm going to do health UI. Oh, one thing I forgot that we need to add in here is we're going to also do using Unity engine.ui. So what that does is it should allow it to read image now. So as you can see, it turned my image to blue, which means that it's finding what that means. So by putting the UI in here, it allows us to read and recognize anything that our UI system sees. I kind of forgot to go over that a second ago. Sorry about that. But let's go ahead and move on. And one last thing we're going to do is we're pretty much set. Let's go into our void update on this. So I'm going to do health UI dot sprite equals health health, if I can spell, health sprite, and we're gonna do sorry. And in here, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna put in death count. And so what this says is it's looking for our health UI dot sprite. So it's looking for that health UI sprite, whatever that sprite's going to be in our UI image, right? which is over here. So what is this image going to be? And it's going to choose the sprite that is this number in. And so you might be going, what the heck does that even mean? So I want to hit Command S to save this. And as we go into our player, oh, we got something. Let's see what's going on here. Did I miss? Oh, yep, I'm missing a line. So let me just add in one. I accidentally must have deleted it earlier. Press Command S, it's all good. All right. So I'm going to go back over here, give it a second. I'm going to make sure I connect my player health to my player. So I've dragged that on there. If I go to the bottom, oh, I have two of these. Let me go ahead and delete one. I've got my player health UI. And so on this, I need to select an image. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to grab my canvas image. And instead of calling this image, I'm going to go ahead and call this health UI. So that way, when I go looking for it, it's very simple. I'm going to go back to my player, scroll all the way down to where I can see that. I'm going to grab my health UI. I'm going to drag it in there. Remember, this is just an image. And then in my health sprite, as you can see, there's a little arrow here. And so this is where I was talking about we're going to input how many we need. So I'm going to say size equals 3. So what that means is I've got 0, 1, and 2 elements. So with this, I'm going to go into my assets and my sprites because I've created this health sprite right here I was using. Go back over to my player so I can see that. And at the bottom here, I'm going to change my element. So I've got at health 0, meaning that I have lost 0 health at this point. I'm going to put in my 3. At health 1, I'm going to put in my 2. And at health 2, or element 2, I'm going to put in my health 2. And what this basically means is that at 0, with 0 death count, right, I should be displaying these 3 hearts. With 1 death count, I should be displaying 2 hearts. With 2 death counts, I should be displaying 1, right? And so as I press play, let's make sure this works. Let's go. All right, so as I press play and I run into that, as you can see, I've lost a health. I've died a little bit. If I do it again, I've lost another health. And here I don't lose any more health, right? Because I don't have anything else to lose. Now, if I wanted, I could turn this size up to 4. And I could just have put this to none. And so when I get none sprites, I believe what it'll do is it'll give me, that white box again. But so yeah, now I have a white box there because I just don't have anything to fill the space. Really what I could do is I could go back and I could just have a blank, or I could just, make it shut off. But that's kind of how you do this. It's really simple. This isn't meant to be crazy. So I want you guys just to get a basic heads-up display. It doesn't have to be perfect. Right now, I have these really awkward hearts that are weird. I don't necessarily love them, but they're my placeholders. They're there so that eventually I can go ahead and I can change what sprite I want to put there and how that's going to look in my heads-up display. But this was just a basic tutorial on how to do health. Now, like I said, I have my health sitting at 3, right? I want my death count to get as high as 3 for these. And so that's not a big deal. That's not a huge thing. All right, I'll talk to you guys next class. Have a good one.